So on this program, I try to strike the right balance between being complacent and being alarmist. I try to avoid being either. I try to just be realistic and kind of give it to you straight. Simply telling you that there is concern among Democrats about Minnesota, I think is accurate. I don't think it's alarmist and I don't think it's complacent. Donald Trump, according to some Democratic strategists, could win the state of Minnesota. And you might be worried. You might be wondering, Minnesota, or should we really be worried about that? Why? Well, the truth is that Minnesota hasn't voted for a Republican presidential candidate since 1972. That's just shy of 50 years ago. And if you look at the polling, it sort of looks okay, right? I mean, it looks okay for Joe Biden. Joe Biden's currently leading the polling in Minnesota by an average of 3.7. But the problem is that 3.7 really isn't that much to be comfortable with. Minnesota was actually already almost a problem for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Hillary Clinton did win Minnesota in 2016, but only by about 1.5. And if you look further into history, Barack Obama won Minnesota by 11. In 2008, he won it by 8 in 2012. John Kerry won Minnesota by 4 in 2004. Al Gore won it only by 2 in the year 2000. And so when you see it this close and you know that there's voter suppression that's not in the polling, there's meddling that's not in the polling, there's all sorts of things that are not reflected by the polling, I am not particularly comfortable with Joe Biden being up by only 3.7 in the state of Minnesota. Now, there's another reason that Minnesota could be a problem and Minnesota could turn into the Wisconsin of 2020. Remember, in 2016, Hillary Clinton was widely criticized for not spending time in Wisconsin, a state that she ultimately lost by a very small margin. And it was one of those 3 states that flipped the results to Donald Trump electorally. Joe Biden may have a similar situation right now. And what I mean by that is in Florida, Joe Biden is struggling with Latino voters right now in Florida. And it seems as though Joe Biden is going to have to devote even more resources to Florida. Florida, always a focal point, particularly for Democrats, because taking Florida away from the Republican candidate is so powerful in these electoral races to 270. But again, if Joe Biden has to put more time and effort into Florida than he would otherwise have to, ordinarily have to, were it not for the Hispanic vote, he may not have the resources or time in Minnesota. And Minnesota is exactly the type of state that the polling could get wrong. Remember, the 2016 polling was mostly correct at the national level. At the national level, the polling said Hillary's up 3 and she won by more than 2 in the popular vote. But it is also true that the polling was not correct in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, Hillary Clinton in the polling was winning by 6.5. And you might recall, as I just mentioned 5 minutes ago, Donald Trump won Wisconsin by about 3/4 of a point. The Wisconsin polling was very, very wrong. So what do we do about Minnesota, about all of these situations? Well, we learn from the past. We learn from past experiences. We understand that Democrats are worried about Minnesota. And so we should be worried about Minnesota and we should focus on it. When Trump advisors, let me back up. When Trump publicly says all our polls look great, we're winning everything, it's BS. We all know it's BS. When privately Trump advisors and Republican strategists say, we're not writing off Michigan, we understand that Michigan could get complicated. When privately they start looking again at a state like Minnesota, we understand that we can't ignore it. We never stop the focus on getting out the vote. And any one of these states could be the difference maker. Now, in the coming weeks, I'm going to show you some of my plausible electoral maps. Now, why the hell would you listen to me about that? You really shouldn't. I got it way wrong in 2016. In 2016, I believed the Wisconsin polling. And so on my map, I had Wisconsin definitely for Hillary. I was wrong. But I am going to give you some scenarios. And incredibly, there is a scenario for this upcoming election that would put the electoral votes at 269 to 269. It's not the most likely scenario, but it's also not that unlikely. And it depends on Maine being split as they do in terms of their electoral vote. So we will get to that. We have plenty of time for that.